from one, they can cross from one occupation to another. Labor resource. The stronger our basic labor skills are, or labor-based skills are, the more competitive we would tend to be. All right, competitiveness. As I said earlier today, competitiveness very often is launched from David Ricardo's, I'm an economist, so I have to talk about an economist, David Ricardo's concept of comparative advantage. Comparative advantage. Comparative advantage, just to kind of outline it very briefly, simply is a way of us understanding why one group should specialize in those areas where they enjoy the lowest possible cost of producing something compared to another group who may have an advantage in producing something at a lower cost compared to the first group, and then they make trades. That's what a comparative advantage is. You have a comparative advantage in producing automobiles, you have a comparative advantage in producing airplanes. And somehow there's trades that take place across the regions. That's what the comparative advantage would be. I don't know if automobiles and aircraft work out well, but you get the idea, hopefully. The competitive advantage is a little bit different. Competitive advantage, I have a definition of that in a little bit here. Competitive advantage is a little bit more than comparative advantage. It also speaks to the issue of quality of life. And where David Ricardo's comparative advantage just simply assumed away the quality of life and just simply spoke to the issues of production. So the key here is, in my opinion, and the opinion of some authors in literature, would be competitiveness requires that we raise the living standards of those people that are living within that particular region, that are living and working within that particular region. All right. What are the drivers of competitiveness? What are the drivers? Porter would say productivity, very close, very similar to David Ricardo. Productivity. Make us more productive, make the workers more productive, make the capital more productive, utilize the latest and greatest technologies. This is where innovation takes place. Patenting. All works towards productivity, improving productivity. Paul Krugman, however, would argue that, well, the primary driver in the competitiveness of a particular region, the relative competitiveness, is not necessarily productivity by itself, but what we really should do is strive to raise the per capita output, raise the output per worker. So productivity, to Porter, is total productivity out of the region. Krugman takes it down a step, and actually kind of makes it a little bit more micro, and says what we really should do is focus on each individual's worker's productivity. Make everybody more productive. And that was the point I was trying to make before, where if we can make workers, if we can provide workers with the strong basic skills to where they can crosswalk from one occupation to another, they become increasingly productive. So the output per worker would tend to be pressured upward as a result of focusing so much attention on their basic skills. And then we take a look at some of the other drivers, some of that kind of an umbrella driver here. I'd like to take a look at something we often refer to as a multi-factor productivity measure. Multi-factor productivity. You see, too often, we as economists, we as analysts, and we even practitioners would focus a lot of attention, and rightly so, a lot of attention on bringing in industries that's going to provide employment. Okay, that's great. Does that really directly influence productivity to the level that we need it? Not always. Can we raise the output per worker? Possibly. But what we often do is that we fail to look, some of us fail to look at the peripheral productivity measures. What else can we do? What else contributes to productivity other than just giving somebody a job and paying them a wage? And And for that, we need to take a look at a couple of other variables. One, of course, would be human capital. You guys know what the meaning of human capital is? What we talk about with human capital? What we mean by human capital? Jennifer, right? Jennifer, what do we mean by human capital? Hey, you're the graduate student. I got to think on you a little bit. You know, okay? What do we mean by human capital?
With like benefits of things that we give to our employees, the multi-factor of productivity, not just giving them a job, but like what other things that you're doing for them.
Like what? Give me an example.
Like good health care or
okay.
401k or.
Okay, that's part of the wage though.
Oh.
That's what you're paying, right? It said the wage is the total wage bill.
Yeah.
Human capital. How about non-human capital? What do we mean by non-human capital?
Machines.
Machines, right? Those are goods used to make other goods, to keep it simple, right? Goods used to make other goods. Now let's put a human face in front of it, right? What do the machines do for us? It helps us become productive, right? We have people there. If you get a machine with better technology, instead of producing 8 bottles a second, they can produce 30 bottles a second, okay? That would be new technology, new machines, new capital investment. Having said that, let's talk about human capital, okay? Yeah, better. Well, education is part of it, okay? What are you doing now, Jennifer? Right now, what are you doing? You're learning, right? And what do you expect to get out of it besides a degree? What do you expect to get out of it? Maybe a better job, right? And the only way you're going to get a better job is if you're more productive. And that's what human capital is. It is the attempt to make human beings more productive. That's all it is. Okay? Human capital investment. Right? And so we see the ability of workers, let's say, which are mostly human, right, to improve their productivity within a particular region could aid the competitiveness of that region. It could be a driver of that region. This is why we see many regions that have a vibrant educational cluster, if you will, both at the post-secondary and secondary levels. We see that those clusters tend to rise. Those regions tend to thrive, partly because of this emphasis, this driver of human capital investment. I want to make sure that you understood what it was. Too often I'll mention a term and I don't get a warm feeling that people really know what it means. Okay? And thank you for being a sport. Okay?
Well, there are other countries, though, that put human capital
Absolutely.
aspect a lot more than we do.
Yes, that's true. That is absolutely true. And you know, there are criticisms with respect to just focusing on human capital. So I'm not going to just focus on human capital. But there are other countries that really focus on that. Look at we talk about our education system, right? I always complain about it. I always say that, you know, the math that my students need to have in basic economics, I often call it baby economics, the intro course, is simply 6th or 7th grade math. If they're from the United States, if they're from China or Japan, it's 3rd grade math, right? Because they focus a lot of attention on the basic skills at a very young age, okay? And that's, you know, that obviously impacts their productivity. Okay, externalities. An externality. And what I'm focusing on here is something we identify often as positive externalities of productivity. And externalities is more than just a multiplier effect. But let's think about positive externalities. Positive externality is a benefit that is actually you know, enjoyed by those outside of a market transaction. Education is a good example of that. If we educate someone, make someone literate, then even